You really don't want to give him something that's just going to straight up win the game for the team, as well as a lot of Aurelia's hero pool actually not playing very nicely versus analogs. The Quap ban is very interesting for me. I think if Hokori really wanted to, maybe they slam the Batrider here, but okay. Gardic Treant, another classic pick. Super comfort hero for him. Plays it so fantastically. It's a really nice pickup as well versus the Mirana. It's one of those heroes that it's very difficult for Fleet to actually capitalize on it. And early levels, the Treant Protector just beats into you until you get that leap. Even once you have that leap, if the Treant Protector is ever able to slink on top of you, you kind of have to run. You can't really make that trade happen. And I like this a
Mhm.
lot. This is a hero that Team were unable to get for Rioya twice yesterday. Love that they're actually able to play the Leshrac here. We've seen Rioya when he's not able to get on his Quap or his Storm Spirit, been relying on this Leshrac, and I just think it causes stuff to happen on the map, especially playing versus a Treant Protector. Now you have that guaranteed push. Now you get to commit one spell. You suddenly have to force that big defense from Hokori. Really like the Leshrac pickup.
And now we see Team Team maybe taking their drafting style in a slightly different direction from what we had seen across their last couple of appearances. Normally, Brax's hero was sort of prioritized earlier on with that offlane position. This time, they're going to sort of save it for the absolute last pick. And outside of, what, the Brew and the Mars, not a lot of those offlane heroes have been banned away, and Hokori already have theirs in the Tide. So sure, that pool can be maybe whittled down a little bit further with the Phase 3 bans, but you're not going to be able to entirely take everything out of Brax's hands while you get the Lesh and the Clinks locked down at an earlier point where you maybe don't have to worry quite as much about them being pulled away.
Yeah, and I feel like both teams are really self-aware right now. I think that they go for the Treant Protector first, even though the Bat was easily the most dictated pick after that Queen of Pain ban. But then Team immediately say, okay, we don't have the Quap. We're thinking about this Batrider that you want to pick up, so we're going to pick two heroes that are going to be hell for you to be around. We've seen it before where the Batrider, if you are fighting into those Clinks arrows, once you get that Aghanim Shard, it is incredibly hard to push into those archers where the Sammy Boy is going to be right at home on his Clinks. And in addition to that, the Leshrac, while it does lane, I think, slightly worse than the Queen of Pain versus the Batrider, it's the same story. If you lasso this Leshrac, you are going to be ticked down by that Pulse Nova. I think Team are very aware of this Batrider pick, and they got some very good choices versus it. I don't think that Analog is going to necessarily be upset, but he's definitely going to be under just that little bit more pressure.
Yeah, the plays are not going to be nearly as easy for him, and he's going to be far more easily punished, even if you try for something like the BKB play to maybe nullify some of that magic damage coming out. The Clinks and the physical damage will still give him issues. So we'll see really how much Hokori are going to be able to put together for that bat. I mean, I assume Analog is probably still going to have things like stacked camps to fall back on, but later on in the game, those initiations are going to become really incredibly important for them.
Yeah, and now I think Hokori in their final hero here, they really need to pick up some damage. Everyone is so geared at that slow burn. Everyone really doesn't do that much. I think the biggest nuke they have right now is Power Shot, and that isn't enough to really warrant this Tide pick. This Tide is going to be a fantastic tool for delaying a lot of the pushes that Team are going to go for early, but of course, that does pure damage now. So the Hood of Defiance build that we see all these Tides go for is definitely going to feel a little bit thinner versus Lesh in current patch. So I think that's where you need to get something where you're pushing onto a tier 1 tower, you're already set up with Vitali, he gets the Ravage out, and then you've got that carry that's going to go in, do an insane
Thanks,
amount of
guys.
physical
Thanks a
damage
lot.
in that burst, and then you get some kills going. I think they really need that type of hunt hero where I think both the Troll and the Bloodseeker would have fit very nicely with them, but they need a little bit more burst damage here. Otherwise, I think that Team could definitely get you off of them, and if Team are able to walk away, again, that's where the setup is going to come into effect, where once that tomb is down, once those archers are placed, it's a strategy that Team have done many times before. I do think Hokori with the Beastmaster and Sand King bans, though, again, right on the money. They know exactly what they don't want to play against.
Mm-hmm. Heroes that Brax could really use to do the exact things that Brax kind of always does. He can set up for kills, and if he's not looking for kills, then he can sort of dominate a lane with those two in particular. So they take them away, but that does still lead into the Pangolier pick for that Team
Yeah.
side. So still problems with the Pango just sort of jumping in there with the Rolling Thunder and breaking up all of Hikori's team fight plans.
Yeah, unfortunately, because you had such good bands coming out from Hokori, it is not your A tier right now. It's a very good hero. We saw how impactful it was in every single game we've seen it picked, especially when it was in Udomi's hands. However, you are playing versus a Treant Protector, you're playing versus a Bat Rider. I think that both the Beastmaster and the Sand King would have felt a little bit better. In addition to that, you're not naturally setting up for Flea with the follow-up arrow. And that's something that Team in the majority of their picks really weren't able to set up. I think Flea is kind of hung out to dry in that regard. He's really going to need to rely on himself and his own skill, something I'm certain that he's very confident in. But that's where this Pango pick is really good. It's something that Brax is fantastic at. It's a traditional offlaner in that same sense. But again, it's where the bands definitely feel like when you last pick your offlaner, you're going to get targeted down really heavily. And Nakes, okay.
Okay. Well, we saw Yuma take this hero for a spin in that previous series. Obviously, was not able to find success, but the hero did a lot of what they wanted it to, right? You've got the damage, the durability, and someone who can farm at a pretty exceptional rate, especially in RDO's hands. So you're going to be a little bit less susceptible to some of the team lockdown, but later on in the game, I'm going to be maybe a little bit worried about how the Lifestealer stacks up against a late game fully farmed Clinks.
Yeah, that's where I think their timing is definitely going to be a little bit sooner, as well as I think in the game where Yuma ended up playing it, he had a hero like the Storm Spirit that allowed him to get even further deeper in these lineups. And of course, the Bat Rider is very good at that job. You ain't no Storm Spirit. It's going to feel like getting in those backlines is definitely going to be a little bit more difficult, as well as even though I like the Lifesteal a lot, you're not a natural tomb hitter. I think really the big reason they go for this hero is it plays really well versus the Life Shrek and really well versus the Marana, where you don't have that arrow setup. You don't have that splitter follow-up stun if we do see Rioya go for an item like the Yule Scepter, something that we probably will see him skip. Probably just go for the Boots of Travel into the Kaya Sanj. So I really do like this hero versus the Lesh, but that's where, again, we have to see how this carry matchup is going to kind of proceed, because Clinks is very good versus the Lifestealer if you're able to get a few too many items.
Yeah, that Clinks needs to be able to create the space for himself to farm, and Sammy, I mean, for the most part, 9 times out of 10, he is very much capable of doing that. So we'll see which team sort of maybe feels that pressure first to try and make that move and try to get themselves the edge before this pushes into that sort of deeper late game scenario. Hokori may have to pick up the pace a little bit more compared to their opponents, but we'll see. They've got heroes that could potentially do that. El Misho in particular on this Wind Ranger is always someone we look to as a playmaker, so if they can get something done, maybe not directly in this bottom lane, as you were sort of mentioning, Tide Wind Ranger is maybe not the best at just sort of running people down. If Vitalik could get the Gush, then I'm sure they could try and do something into the Shackle, but it's going to be a pretty big if, and you're still not really guaranteed to have the damage or really the detection at this point either to maybe get onto Sammy, but they will obviously be attempting at least in that off lane.
Well, and really, I think the big moment for Hikori in that bottom lane is when El Misho gets level 3. That's where both Vitali also has that level 3, or that second point in Anchor Smash, but you want all 3 abilities available to you on the wind before you make any really big plays. That's also where they also have to beat all the way through this Undying. It's Mike's sole job to just be as obnoxious as possible. I think Wind is one of the best heroes at actually keeping that Undying at arm's length, but that's where, again, it is something that you're just going to have to deal with. And it does mean that the aggression is definitely going to be more of a waiting game, I think, for both sides. I think Sammy Boy is able to put out a lot of harass on these heroes, and that's where we might see El Misho just go for a point up in the win run level 1, trying to trade up efficiently versus that Clinks. But that's where I think whoever gets the other member of their team at arm's length is going to be at a pretty big advantage here. If you can especially put a lot of harass onto Vitali, make him a little bit too scared to walk up in the wave, we're really just going to see this Tide eat of the brunt force of that team lineup.
The Tidehunter's job is just going to be, yeah, stand in front, absorb that damage, wait for the right time to ravage, and see where you can go from there. So that applies to the fights, that applies to the lane. Now, Hokori, they're eyeing up the river here. We'll see if anybody pushes out, but Ryoya really doesn't look like he wants to do too much here. He sees Gardic already, and you got to assume there's other heroes nearby. So No funny business here to start. It's just going to be a pretty simple 2-2 split once Flea grabs this second rune, and we'll get the laning stage underway. But ET, we were talking about maybe the offlane duo for Hokori having an opening, but maybe being not quite as streamlined as some other partnerships that we've seen in that offlane role. The same thing kind of applies here up top. You mentioned Flea really doesn't have much setup to really guarantee that arrow. If he hits it, great. Brax can push in. We'll see what he can do with the shield crash swashbuckle combo, but you are basically free firing an arrow with no other way to guarantee a hit.
Yeah, and that's where we're just going to see Flea go for the farm. Go for the arrows onto the melee, or rather the medium camp, usually just trying to get as much farm as he can. I also like that Flea is already battling for his large camp here, because this is a farm lane for Team. Once you have levels, really the big success that they're looking for is getting enough farm and levels on both the Pango and the Mirana. That's why you see Flea even walking over to his own large camp, because that is the main goal of this lane. If you can get level 6 in a reasonable fashion on Brax, and you can get some last hits and some farm onto Flea, we've seen how much he can do with the little bit of net worth that he's able to obtain on this Mirana.
Mm-hmm. And something we saw from a couple of the Mirana plays recently, both in the playoffs and towards the sort of back end of the group stage, is the maybe Yule's play out from Flea as well. I think Flea in particular was one of the Miranas who picked it up earlier, and in a lineup that doesn't really provide him a lot in the way of that sort of direct setup, he could sort of call his own number with the Yules to make that arrow connect. But that's going to be sort of later down the road if he can actually find that farm, but it's something Flea has been incredibly good at so far.
Yeah, and he does have an interesting choice. If he does go for the Yule Scepter, of course, it doesn't play into the Lifestealer at all. You can't stun him more or less ever. But it is that forcing move where you are at least able to do something. Unfortunately, mistime that arrow slightly so that large camp won't respawn in time, but again, the name of the game is give Brax as much soul XP as possible while Flea is trying to stack, trying to farm elsewhere. It's the real reason that you go for this Mirana. You just win the XP gain every single time.
Meanwhile, for RDO, I mean, the Lifestealer is not looking for any early action here. He just wants the last hits, he wants the farm, and he's been doing a pretty solid job of picking that up. Brax really can't do too much onto him. Maybe if Flea hits an arrow, that becomes a little bit different, but without it, this Lifestealer is just going to sit here and farm as that arrow... Ooh, that arrow misses just about everything, so... a bit unfortunate, but Gardic is honestly playing this one pretty well. He's being so obnoxious right now. You see him going in with the Leech Seed, just trying to make sure Flea stays, well, kind of as far back as possible. Keep him at arm's length so that the Lifestealer can continue to farm, but now Flea leaping forward. If he hits the arrow, they should have the kill. And there it is at point-blank range. Yeah, so Brax may not have gotten the swashbuckle, but Flea's still able to handle business, and first blood goes Team's way.
Yeah, and it's just Garnick sticking around. He knows how much he needs to value blocking this large camp, but definitely just fantastic harass and really good setup from Flea. And of course, if he misses that, he doesn't get the kill. He has to rely on, again, that individual skill, but something he's super competent with. And now getting boots this early definitely feels like all that soul XP that you're giving over to Brax feels even more free because you get that kill and you get this full wave now pushing into the Pango. So top lane is a massive success for Team.
Now, of course, Brax is not exactly outpacing RDO experience-wise. You see the Lifestealer is still really right on par with him, but, I mean, if the Lifestealer hits 6, neat, he's going to keep on farming. If Brax hits 6, then that Rolling Thunder suddenly becomes a massive tool for them to make some aggressive plays. Speaking of which, Flea, he TPs himself mid, going for that sort of bottle recharge for Ryoya, but his presence also makes it so that Analog didn't feel comfortable trying to contest for that water rune. If he pushes in, that's a relatively easy arrow to line up. So your bat, now takes a bit of a step back because his bottle's on empty and he has to sort of step away. But down bot, Mike, well, he does get picked off. There's that level 3 from El Misho that you were talking about. 1 point up in each ability. Vitali comes in with the gush and the damage, and they are able to put one on the board there to sort of tie things up.
Yeah, the wave is also just really far forward. I'm surprised Mike isn't going for maybe that small camp pull-off instead, but at least you are still giving relatively free farm over to Sammy Boy. And Vitali can still be pressured pretty heavily here. He does have that ring of health, but until he has maybe another point up in the Kraken shell, he is just going to get beat up by this Clinks. Once he has whatever this Ring of Health is going to build into, though, that's where the lane definitely does get a little bit more difficult for him, as well as I think El Micho bringing him, yeah, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. Heal his teammate up, get Vitali, well, not even really back into the lane, just keep him in the lane right now, but all of this is coming in a scenario where Sammy, much like RDO up top, is really just going to sit back and enjoy the last hits. There's really not a lot of pressure to be deployed onto him at the moment. He did just lose his support, so that makes him play maybe slightly more cautiously, but Sammy would need to make a rather sizable mistake for him to actually get caught out himself, although right now his teammates, look at that, they're pushing mid, they get the arrow onto Analog, and Gardic is going to try to save his buddy, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. Ryoya still gets the kill with the DOT, and now Gardic might be in a little bit of trouble. Flea hit him up with the Starstorm, only level 1 though, and your Lesh doesn't really have the health or the mana to keep that chase going, but at that point, they got what they wanted. They find the kill onto the bat, they get some damage onto the tier 1. El Micho will get a little bit of gold there because he took down the Tombstone after the fact, but you will still make that trade-off pretty much every time.
Yeah, and that's where Ryoya is also really doing a fantastic job in his lane. As you can already see, Leshrac has so much more damage than the Batrider naturally, so going for those denies isn't really an option, as well as you can't napalm your own creeps. It's not like you have that damage bonus to work with, so you're playing versus a hero who is already itemized so heavily, and once you get level 6, you just see Analog. He's always going to get walked back here. It's where this Leshrac is going to feel really good versus the Batrider. Unfortunately, once you do get a little bit too much farm on the bat, you can definitely just ignore the lane like he is right now, but it is going to be a much slower boots of travel than I think Analog is used to.
Especially considering Flea even threw an arrow in there to steal one of his creeps away, so every little bit you are taking some of that gold, you are sort of preventing some of these stack plays from coming through, and Analog actually got to stack the camp himself, which, I mean, you still need the camp stacked, so, you know, at the end of the day he is going to do it, but if you're 7 minutes in and you're kind of stacking your own camps out of necessity, instead of luxury, then it's not the best of starts for you by any means. But Analog, I don't know, he's got plenty of time to catch up here, and he really, this start is not as bad as it could be, but gotta try and do something for him in the near future, because if that lasso is just gonna sit there long term, then this Hokori lineup is not really playing up to its full potential right now in terms of setting that pace.
Yeah, and it's the unfortunate circumstance where, because of the strength of Undying Clanks, you never were really able to sit Vitali by himself, and it's no one's fault. It just means that there hasn't been enough time for El Micho to go for like those big ancient stacks that we see a lot of those Batriders able to farm, but it'll all be fine. Analog will get his boots of travel eventually, and that's where we'll probably see him really explode onto the map, but that's also where you are giving quite a lot of free time and farm over to Ryoya, and he has scouted out all
Oh
of these
boy.
stacks here, and big steals from him. They need to bring some heroes here on Hokori, or this is just going to be free. Look at it.
Look at
Oh
all
boy.
of that. It's just gone. Brax and Mike are in there to help out, and Gardic was the only one in an immediate position to defend it. RDO, though, is going to now push in. There's the Rage being popped, and they're going to try for this fight, but with Brax rolling forward, it's all just broken up. Analog, he does get the lasso, but can he pull this all the way down? Yes, he can. The Shackle's there as well, so they do get IX Mike. Now Flea, you're going to need to use those leap charges to try and get away, but El Micho is trying to keep up with him. El Micho, though, doesn't have a whole lot of HP, so he's got to be careful of this fight. Now with Ryoya jumping back in, RDO has to use the Rage defensively, and this is not looking great for Hokori. They're getting just corralled back towards their own tier 1. And it looks like most of them will make it away. Gardic did get sort of locked down by Brax on the back end there, so that is going to be a kill going Team's way. But honestly, the trade-off of the supports is not really the important part there. The fact of the matter is Team got all of that stack before the fight even broke out.
Yeah, and Ryoya continues to play in this incredibly efficient spot of the map to play in. Even finishes off the other medium camp stack there. They just really can't make that a rotation over towards the Leshrac right now. Now, Ryoya is out of mana, so they don't need to worry about this top tower going down anytime soon. So I do like that Hokori are now trying to reinstate themselves on the bottom side of the map, but that's where, as long as these tier 1s are alive, Hokori still needs to battle over every single one. The longer they can keep that fight going, though of course the Train Protector is going to try and heal it up, but that's also where it is Ryoya's only job to get out on the map, and actually gets a nice little bottle refill there, so this top lane is going to be the next objective for him.
And unless Hokori TP up here, the Living Armor, it's not going to be enough against Ryoya with the maxed out Edict, so he will push his way forward, tower dropping rapidly, but Hokori, at this point, would rather just go for the trade-off. Fair enough. They'll take a tier 1 down bot, so they keep that front even, but you got to assume Ryoya, now that he's taken down that one objective, that first one, he's going to keep on pushing. Speaking of pushing, Flea and Sammy hitting up Gardic there in the river. DD rune on the Mirana sort of setting that up, and Sammy just wanders his way over to get his first kill.
Yeah, and Sammy making really quick progress and not messing with the Falcon Blade at all, going straight for that Maelstrom. Like to see it still, especially with how many stacks that Flea has for him. Once he does have that Maelstrom, got a nice, pretty 4-stack there, so he's going to farm that incredibly quickly. And that's where I'd love to see Hokori try and make an effort to scout that out, because you get wind of that, and suddenly Vitaly with his hood can actually make that rotation. But unfortunately for them, I think with the way that their other lanes have gone and how slow Analog is to really make his progress, even though you have the boots of travel, I don't think you actually have the strength to make that big fight happen. And that's where Sammy Boy is going to eclipse everyone net worth-wise.
Already moved his way up to the top, and that progress will continue. And for Hokori, I mean, their vision's been focused really in two places. They've got the ward down here in the south, and the other wards are in their own north side jungle to try and protect their side. Unfortunately, you can't make any plays down south. RDO's farming it, but they're not going to find any kills there, and the wards up top aren't actually really giving them information that they can use. They know that their opponents are there, they're taking those camps, but this is why Analog's sort of slower progress kind of hurts for them, because they can't push in with him. Vitaly is nowhere even close to any sort of Blink Dagger play there, as he got the phase boots delivered out. So they don't really have that initiation right now, and with your vision concentrated there, they don't see the stacks in this west side jungle that Sammy is just going to massively enjoy here. The Maelstrom's finished, so it might take him a little while to get through it, but he is going to get it started now, and there's no one close on the Hokori side.
Yeah, unfortunately, he was maybe a half second off of stacking it one more time, but this is going to happen. And he gets all of the soul XP. It's not like Ryoya needs to come over and then help out the Clinks. It's just every single Burning Barrage, and this is going to be a massive Clinks, and that is one of the win objectives. If Sammy Boy is able to get items like the Dragon Lance in the Scotty, it is going to feel impossible for a lot of these Hokori heroes to approach, and they're just really spending all of their resources to defend their own jungle. And I think Team are absolutely happy with it. Expend the Pango roll just to get everyone out, and just means that they're going to farm across the map, and Ardeo's getting set up on.
Point blank arrow into the barrage. The rage still comes through though, but honestly, actually he probably should have just, he should have just gone for the TP, but Vitaly is there, and that should be enough. So he knew reinforcements were coming, and I mean, a TP scroll is probably not that big a deal, but he spares the cooldown if nothing else, and while he's infested into his teammate, he was able to heal back up. So overall, that's going to be just fine for that Hokori side as they now try to push the tower, but you see the TPs coming in. Team want to hold this. They're not willing to give it up without a fight, and I don't know if it's a fight Hokori want right now. Vitaly's here with the Ravage, but they don't have Analog. He's too far away. His lasso's already been used, so wouldn't really be able to immediately contribute too much if they pushed forward.
Yeah, and that's where we will probably see Vitaly just slam his head in this mid lane. He's going to be the best hero to protect the mid tower, while he is also the only one that's able to walk across the river. I think everyone else is a pretty big target on Hokori's side, even RDO, who is still, you know, building up his items. Once he gets the Scotty on the Lifestealer, that is the situation where if RDO is ever able to right-click the Clinks, it's going to feel terrible. But that was a straight-up solo kill. Ryoya got him. He played on the tree line and then just bursted him down.
An Analog, I mean, I don't think the lasso would have saved him, but he didn't have it in that scenario to even try for some sort of bailout play. So Ryoya, as you said, just gets that solo kill. That's an absolutely massive one for him. Kaya finished off. Sanj on its way as well, so he's going to get pretty tanky. And now, yeah, middle lane, they're going to jump in onto Vitaly. He is not quite alone, but the reinforcements were slow to arrive, and Vitaly may still die. The Starstorm brings him down. That's a good shackle onto Mike afterwards, so maybe they can get that return kill, but Mike going to heal himself up, turns around for the decay, still not enough. So he will fall, but that is Mike for your Tidehunter. The only thing that would have made that better if your team is if you could have pushed for the tower, but you'll still take that trade-off, especially since it came in the immediate aftermath of the pickoff onto Analog up top.
Yeah, and that's where Team still have this problem where if they do overextend, there is no way to get anyone off of RDO. RDO will just be able to seek you down with the Ghoul Frenzy. There's no way for you to peel off of this Lifestealer until you get items like the Force Staff, like the Yules, like the Blink Dagger. You need something among those lines, and then you're going to be a little bit more obnoxious. But that's also where, sure, you lose Vitali mid, but now you're making this play here. Nice dodge out from RDO. This is a
Arrow
huge
won't
fight,
hit.
though.
Flea's still jumping in, but look
Oh,
at
what a
that
shackle!
shackle! Lee gets locked down. He's dead, and Hokori, well, they're back off initially, but they're still hanging out. They're still here, and Analog has the lasso back up. He's waiting for his moment, seeing who pushes forward to try and
Oh,
defend. It's
Mike.
Mike. Mike, that's still... I mean, he saw that in Fest, but, well, didn't really show enough respect there. As he gets taken down, Analog gets the kill, and now the tower will fall. They don't have the manpower to hold it.
Yeah, and that's where a 5 like the Undying, who is really bound to his Flesh Golem timing. You feel so strong when you have it, but you're a little bit too far up, and they definitely played into the Nakes a little bit too much there. Sammy Boy even peeled off of that mid tower really early on. I think they really weren't ready for the engagement that Hokori started. Mike's death is really bizarre, though. I really think he got caught off guard for what feels like no reason.
Oh,
Yeah,
Vitali.
Vitali.
Gonna try to hit him up. Brax is coming in with the roll, and if he can get the bounces here, Sammy's got the damage. Flea's even coming in. The Starstorm comes through. Vitali is going to be dropped, and now they want onto
Wow.
Amisho as well. That...
So well played.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly well played by Team, but the strangest position for Hokori to be, especially this ward, this is not safe. I mean, they can see a camp, but the high ground was really where they needed to focus as... Oh boy, Gardic. Yeah, that's not good. Overgrowth gets used, and he doesn't even get out. Now, that's 3 heroes gone in the space of about 30 seconds, and the tier 1 tower honestly can just get burned through as well. With Sammy here, they're just going to take it easily.
Yeah, high fives all around. That was so clean. And I understand that Hokori want to stay in enemy territory whenever they do have the Ravage available to them, but that's where not having those Sentry Ward combos is definitely biting them. It really feels like they stuck around in an area where they were more or less blind, and now Sammy Boy gets to do this double stack and continues to farm up incredibly quickly. That was also just very well executed by Brax there, especially giving up on the kill to then chain it up with El Misho. I don't know, it just felt like they were outclassing their opponents a little bit there, and of course Flea with the freehand arrows is just able to play his own game. He even went for the Yules, even though he is playing into the Nakes, just because he knows he's going to force something out of his opponents. It's going to be an even bigger problem for Analog, where you have to make that incredibly tough decision. Is this Flea by himself that's Yules arrowing me, or is he going to kill me if I don't BKB it? It's a big problem that the Batrider can't solve unless he's starting the fight on his own terms.
And now, something else worth noting, Ryoya, I mean, he's built up the Kaya and Sanj, but this is a scenario where we haven't even really seen that Leshrac get to that full-on battering ram strength, right? They're still tier 2 standing, which is not because Hokori have been able to hold them, it's because Ryoya was focused on getting those first 2 items up and running beforehand. So now, he's going to be feeling a little bit stronger, he's going to have the Boots of Travel up and about 1,000 more gold, and that's when the Lesh is going to start pushing things out. He's going to start taking control of the map away from you. And Hokori, you're going to need to try and take some fights to keep that push at bay. And we really haven't seen it from them. Their lineup looks like it's built to take those fights. They just haven't been able to catch their opponents in the right spot yet.
Yeah, and that's where really the moment where we're going to see momentum shifting is whenever the Lifestealer is able to finish off this Scotty and Sammy Boy is able to finish off this BKB. Once those items are accomplished, then we'll finally see some aggressive nature across the board. But I think right now, it's just a posture game. It's a game where as soon as you commit your spells, especially on the Hokori side, you are on a very big timer. I think the biggest cooldown, again, to work with is probably that Flesh Golem on Team side, where without it, it doesn't feel like you really have this Undying to help you out. And I think that's where Hokori have done a pretty good job with a lot of their older vision, trying to scout out the aggression here. But look at this dive on El Misho. Flea is trying for it so hard.
There's the vision, but he already threw the arrow, so this Euless doesn't set up for the stun, but now Brax, he is rolling in. Sammy wants the intercept. That's a nice sentry down from Gardic, though, so they are going to be able to pop the Overgrowth. I don't think it saves El Misho, but, well, I guess it prevents anyone else from Hokori who maybe was thinking about TPing in, because once they see Sammy there, your TPs aren't going to come in fast enough. So the cores will remain out of the picture, but now the push will start. Ryoya is going to get into position. That forces out that glyph, so Hokori's defensive resources are being sort of used up here, and I mean, Ryoya can just wait. The Edict's back up in 10 seconds, so they clear out this wave, and then they can go in again.
Yeah, and that's another issue. You can run really.
Oh,
What an arrow from Flea. Yeah,
okay.
catches him off guard completely. But this is the issue where while you are constantly pushing into this top tower, and of course all that farm is going onto the west track, you are getting buildings. Meanwhile, Ardio on the other side, he's getting a tier 2 of his own. Oh, they're going for the fight.
Okay. Vitaly TP's in. He's got the Infest. They get the slow onto Ryoya. They need to be able to catch. There's the Ravage coming in. They've got it. The arrow, though, it clipped Ardio in the back. He didn't actually pop that... Whoop. Didn't actually pop the Rage in time. By the time he does, he is so low on HP. Now Mike is getting involved in Ardio. I don't know about this one. He may have to back off. The Starstorm is going to come through. It doesn't kill him. Vitaly's the one who dies, and now Ardio is taken down. Here comes Sammy up from the south to pick off Analog, and if you can't get that immediately, you just can't do it. They had to get Ryoya so quickly there. I mean, he lives throughout that entire fight. Looking at the damage dealt, 4,200 with that Leshrac living. He just completely turns the tides with his teammates' assistance, and Hokori just accidentally wander into the trap.
Yeah, and it's the point that I was just about to make. Ardio has to be bottom to push in, which means Sammy Boy gets to farm his jungle, so they take the engagement knowing that the Clinks isn't immediately there, and then Flea just has the most massive arrow you could possibly ask for. If that arrow doesn't land, then you lose too, right off the bat, and then it's a cleanup session for Sammy Boy and a Lifestealer that should just be able to walk out, but instead that happens, and worst case scenario now for Hokori. Now you have a full Aegis put over on the left track. Now he can be that vanguard to push into the rest of these outer towers, and you use your big cooldown. They are on the back foot for really the rest of this Aegis. They need to find a fight where they're suddenly able to get their opponents off guard, and now instead of waiting for the Scotty, you're probably going to have to wait for this Blink Dagger on the Tide as well. It really feels like now the game has completely changed for Hokori, where before they were definitely able to maintain sort of that net worth and keep it just static, even though TeamTeam were definitely playing at a lead. But now it's where this dual core lineup playing versus Batrider plus Lifestealer is going to feel incredibly difficult to deal with, because at the end of the day, you are playing versus two true cores, where on the Hokori side, you really just have the snakes.
And personally, I love this play from Ryoya right now, getting the shard for himself. The Split Earth, I mean, if he can sort of throw that out there, if that stun can persist, your rage is going to wear off. The BKB that just, or not just, but recently got finished by your Batrider is only going to last so long. So if Hokori want to keep the fight going long term, keep their heroes in this so they can maximize their damage, a lot of that sort of battlefield is going to be taken away from them because of that ever increasing Split Earth radius. So Ryoya is really just looking to sort of force them to go in with everything that they have. If the fight goes on too long, the Lesh is going to hit them too hard. The Splitters are going to be too much of a problem once the magic immunity wears away.
Yeah, and that's also where it plays into their setup, right? You have Tombstone, you have the Archers, now you're going to have Splitters flying. It just feels like it is getting more and more difficult for Hokori to actually get into these fights, and you see that? Sammy Boy hits a tower, you put a Split Earth on top of him, you got 4 more to follow, and then who are you actually jumping
they
here
just
in?
caught RDO. There's the Yules. Flea. Well, he had creeps in
knows.
front of him, so he couldn't go for the arrow, but now they're jumping in. They spotted out Elmisho. Brax is able to hit it up. There's the arrow to come in, and Elmisho will be taken down. So RDO may be able to get out, but they find a kill. They take their outpost back. They can try to fix this bottom lane a bit with Brax pushing it out, and all the while, Sammy is still, oh my god, still looking for kills there. Very nearly gets Gardic. The Infest needs to be used defensively to keep him alive, and now up in the top lane, well, up in the top lane, I'm not entirely sure what was going on there. Analog is going to be able to TP out, but he can't go in. If he tries to lasso Ryoya, then the Aegis is already there, so there's not a whole lot to be done. He's just, at this point, I guess, trying to split push.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes for that lasso, he has to use his BKB, he has to use lasso, and he's definitely not getting that kill. It's just a massive problem right now. I like that Analog is going for this Blink Dagger. I think with it, that's where you can try and pull apart some semblance of what TeamTeam are constantly trying to set up versus you, but that's also where it's still Hokori who are under a lot of the pressure here. I think, again, once they get a lot of these Blink Daggers, Elmisho has his completed as well. You need a Blink on 4 of your members here, and then I can see them trying to catch TeamTeam off guard. But until that point, look at them. They're just kind of walking into everyone here, and it's so difficult. Ooh.
Good
Got
shackle
Mike.
onto Mike. Brax is going to try to roll in. That's not enough, but the tombstone went down, so it's not in the best spot to really affect this fight, but El Misho should still be falling. And now Analog, he's got a TP away. BKB TP gets him home, but now that frees them up to push onto another objective, as this tier 1 really just should be burned through pretty much instantly. Yeah, they get it pretty easily. Do they continue on for the tier 2?
Oh, they're gonna fight. This is good. If they fight during the cleave coming from the tower, they have a lot more damage available to them, but oh, Team, they're being really patient here. If they don't give them the fight, then Hokori actually can't take this. They need to fight underneath the tier 2 tower. They need the damage coming from Glyph.
With Brax pushing his way forward. Arrow flies through, not going to hit anything, but now Vitali, he's charging in. He's going to blink forward. No Ravage, no Infest Bomb just yet, but they do stun up Ryoya. They'll hold him at bay for the time being, but that's still not the opening that they want. They're really looking for the perfect initiation, but all the while, Brax has kind of nestled himself there into the tree line, but at this point, the fight is starting to push too far away from him. The Ravage comes in. They've actually caught out Sammy. Can they bring him down, though? He's going to try to get himself back, but the Overgrowth is going to lock him down. They cannot save him in time. The lasso even deployed just to make sure he wasn't getting away, and Sammy will end up falling. They really do need to try and regroup here, because, yeah, that Tombstone's really putting them in a bit of a weird spot, and they may not have Sammy, but they're regrouping, trying to maintain cohesion, but Mike just got stunned up. If they could bring him down, okay. That's big. Mike will fall. Gardic is even going to buy back, and Brax... Okay, Brax will use the roll-up into the Rolling Thunder. Is this to get away or to go back in, though? Ryoya, I mean, he's looking like he wants the fight, but this is not good. RDO pops the Rage. They'll jump right in. That Leshrac gets hit up by the Shackle Shot, and that was maybe not the smartest of decisions. Brax is finally going to be able to finish off Analog with that Swashbuckle, but now... Can he get out? El Misho's hitting him, but this is El Misho on the Wind Ranger, so it's not a lot of damage. But now RDO is pushing his way over, and I think Brax will be taken down here as the double goes into the Lifestealer's hands. And, I mean, ET, it looked like Team had sort of regrouped and could maybe just make their exodus together. Instead, they kind of double back for another round of fighting, and it was not the right decision with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, it got incredibly awkward for Ryoya there. Of course, they found the right target on Hokori. I think Gardic baiting a little bit there with his own body, just having a little bit more vision than Team expected them to have. But finding the Clinks without BKB, that is who you blink Ravage. That's who they were able to find, and it's why the fight goes so poorly for them. But then, after the fact, Ryoya with the Aegis timing out, sure, he gets his mana back, but he used so much mana whenever that Tombstone was committed that Hokori gets to commit after the Tombstone's already wasted. You don't have mana on Ryoya, so the approach towards that ramp was just more or less free. And of course, Brax tries to make something happen, and you do get the kill onto the Batrider after the fact, but that's where not having a BKB on the Leshrac is going to feel terrible for you, and that's why he's immediately turning his build around. I really like the Blink Dagger. I think it's a good forcing move, especially when it comes to trying to get these players out of your field, but it's also pretty rough. Sammy Boy does get a nice pick on the Gardic there, though.
And Gardic, with the Sentry and the Ward, he did see it. It's just not in time. The Overgrowth just doesn't prevent Sammy from dishing out the damage. So Gardic will get picked off, but they don't actually take these wards away. So that vision will remain for a little while. That's a benefit for Hokori, but well, Team are now on the hunt. They're looking for the fight. El Misho, though, with that Gale Force is going to just sort of push everybody away. But they're still looking. Flea wants in. Vitali's able to sort of blink his way past him, and I do believe Hokori are going to be able to get everybody out of this situation. Or, well, maybe they don't want to get out. RDO, he is kind of looking for this, but now Brax, he's channeled out the Rolling Thunder. I don't know if he can actually close the gap in time, and yeah, with RDO popping the Rage, this is going to get too complicated for them. He's already back into the base, and it's not the longest cooldown there for the Pango, so it was worth a shot, but they're not really able to close that trap in time.
Yeah, it's really good instincts from RDO, and now we have gotten to the point. This is what the game boiled down to now. You have RDO set up with the Halberd and the Scotty. If you get on top of the Clinks, you win. That is how this game goes going forward, especially with the Blink Dagger picked up on the Batrider. If Analog can lasso him into 4, you're going to see that DPS come out. I think all that RDO needs to do here is time that Rage out on the arrow. That's really it. If he is not getting chained up by the Pango and the Mirana, he's got free reign over both of the cores on the team side. Ryoya is also that huge target, and well, Sammy.
BKB is going to get popped. He's looking for it. Do they have the lasso? Yes, they do. It is reflected by the Lotus, but it's going to keep Sammy in the fight. But here comes Mike pushing in. Needs the Soul Rip onto his teammate, but it's just not enough healing. Sammy will go down, and now Mike, he wandered into the fight trying to save his buddy, and he can't. Now he's the one in the line of fire. That Ghost Scepter, though, That's going to help him out, buying a little bit of time, as we do have a DC from Vitaly on the Hokori side. So the fight will continue, but down to the south, the reinforcements are pushing in. Flea is here, Ryoya and Brax are pushing forward as well. Gardic is in the middle of the Overgrowth cast, so I do believe he's going to really get it off here, even if they do finish him. But will that Overgrowth matter? El Misho could maybe get the Shackle Shot afterwards, and if it latches in between two, that could be big, but if it doesn't, it feels like Ryoya and or Brax are going to be able to push to the north and either save IX Mike or try and start a second round of fighting to avenge him in a situation where they really only have the Ravage here, which could be insanely useful for them. A well-placed Ravage could just break all of this apart, but is going to depend on the placement from a currently DC'd Vitaly.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that Vitaly's just going to stick with RDO on this. Unfortunately, still go separate Undying, but that's where I'm more so looking at El Misho, whether or not he's going to be able to chain these heroes up after the fact, because we also have a very scary Pango coming up with the roll in just 2 seconds here. So I think that's the name of the game now. Of course, preparation in Dota, you can't name a worse combo. This is a much different game, I think, if we don't get to sit here and talk about how, oh, El Misho, does he want to go in here? Is he going to look for a shackle? He gets to line it up with his ruler while we wait for the game to resume. But that's also where I think Team, as soon as they get this kill on the Gardic, are going to try and escape as fast as they can. If they do stick around after the fact, it's just a little bit too much time, and no BKBs on any of these heroes, so Vitaly will just be able to immediately change over here. I think the most unfortunate thing that could happen for Team is if Vitaly says, okay, you have Mike, blinks over towards Gardic, gets the 3-man Ravage, and Prax dies before he gets roll off. That's worst case scenario in my mind, but we'll have to see how that actually plays out once this game does get resumed.
Yeah, and that is very much doable. If you were to do it right now, that blink would get him, well, yeah, close enough. The Ravage at that range would sort of hit, maybe not onto Flea, but you would hit up the 2 cores for sure. So we'll see what decision he makes. Unfortunately, they can't really talk that over much because Vitaly, again, is the one who's DC'd. So they are going to have to wait to get him back in. Once they do, I'm sure that they're going to be sort of talking strategy a little bit before they resume this, just to make sure he's up to date with what the hell's going on. But this could very well determine just how this team fight goes. As of right now, it's already a victory for Hokori. They picked off Sammy at the very start, so they don't need to feel overly pressed to go in for another greedy maneuver, but they have one available to them.
Yeah, and that's where just waiting for Hokori to put the G's in the chat, and then we get to see how do they execute here. Is El Misho able to find that shackle? Is Brax going to get the roll off? A lot of questions. Really the worst possible time for a pause to happen. There have been a lot of bad pauses in Dota's history, but this one is pretty trash.
Not great at all. Of course, you know, Vitaly DCing, probably not his fault, but now we'll see how it plays out. Overgrowth comes through, Gardic still dies, there's going to be the blink into the Ravage. They don't actually catch Ryoya there. He was able to get out, and now Brax, I mean, he'll roll away, so Gardic falls. That's going to turn it into a 2-for-1, still in Hokori's favor, but honestly, if you're Team, that was probably the better call to make there. Just get everybody out while you can, and don't get too greedy, because that Tide Ravage was sort of coming through. Gale Force, though, not enough. Brax is still able to walk out of it, and no one else was really coming at that point. El Misho was just trying to chase it himself, so the play breaks up, but Hokori take the trade-off that they wanted.
Yeah, and good kite from Mike. Really like his item build, actually valuing the Ghost Scepter there, but of course, as we still are waiting for him to respawn, you still lost Sammy Boy at the beginning of that, really due to just fantastic play from Analog, actually making the massive jump over to find that Clinks, but also just a good smoke off for Hokori there. That's what led up to that point, but a little bit of prep there, I think, also from the team side, immediately getting the Lotus Orb out onto the last track, but unfortunately, Mike, before it was just a Nakes, now it's the rest of the squad, and do they poke Roche a little bit now?
They can maybe afford to. Sammy is back up, but the Undying would still be a large part of their sort of area denial. But Hokori don't want to do it. They're going to back themselves away instead. Still would have been risky, even with the Undying dead, but I feel like it might have been a missed opportunity for them. The scan still comes through, though, and Vitaly, look at that. He stepped in for maybe 1 or 2 seconds so that the scan pops on him. However, Flea actually checks with the arrow, so they'll see there is no actual Roche attempt going down there, and they're not going to really get baited into it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even back to that fight, there was a gem dropped by Flea. So it does mean that now this Bat Rider gets to do Bat Rider things. You just get to take away so much vision from your opponents, and that's why right now, I think it's a big reason that Team are just completely scouted out by this word. They're going to know about this smoke. Pings already fly here, and how they decide to take it is going to be interesting. El Misho also being the living ward right now on the spot. They're just trying to spoil this Team play as much as they can, and even Vitali getting infested here. He's looking for the counter engagement as well.
We'll see if they start maybe subtly moving themselves into a position. If everyone just rushes to a point, then Team are going to be alerted as well that their opponents may know what's up. So trying to do this as stealthily as possible. Sammy, though, is making his way over to the pit. El Misho, ooh, tried for the shackle, but the Clinks will dodge it. But now they should know. The Roche attempt is happening. The power shot flies through, so they do confirm it. They should also know the tombstone's in there, though, so it's going to make pushing in a little bit hard. Gale Force, though, nicely placed, pushing Sammy and Mike away from that pit. Flea, well, free fires the arrow, doesn't hit. Sammy, though, back into the pit. They're going to keep on going for it.
Look at all the archers.
He's got so many. Whoever jumps in there is going to have a bit of a problem. But actually, speaking of jumping, El Misho, he gets jumped instead. They'll take down that Wind Ranger. There's no buyback on El Misho at the moment, so he's not going to be able to rejoin that engagement. And Team, they're so close to finishing this right now. At a certain point, maybe they just go all in for it, as there's going to be the jump. Vitali wants in. The Ravage is going to be deployed, and they've got Sammy. They'll lasso him up as well. RDO grabs the Aegis, and Sammy is in some serious trouble. They'll take him down. Garda comes in with the Overgrowth now, connecting onto 4. That Ghost play from Mike is keeping him alive while Brax rolls his way through. Ryoya now activates the BKB, looking to dish out that damage. And they're going to get RDO, but that was just the first life. He's coming back up again. So Team, they've got to bail out. And that Roche attempt, I said maybe they just sort of go all in for it, but apparently that was not the call to make, because Vitali was waiting for that exact moment. Once he knows Sammy's not backing back out, just lets fly with the Ravage and they take the engagement.
Yeah, just completely caught him off guard. He had already used his BKB, gets lassoed just for the countermeasure. No chance for him to steal it. And unfortunately, Ryoya did not want to be in that space. He knew that if he had to pop his BKB that early on the Ravage, then very simply the Overgrowth would have followed up there. And while the Leshrac was never under any direct threat there, unfortunately, losing the Clinks that early, it's just really unfortunate. I really feel like they could have taken it a little bit slower, especially because at that point, you don't have your zombie. You don't have the Flesh Golem available to you. You get a second Tombstone down the tail end of that fight. Oh, that Gale Force. That's scary.
Ryoya doesn't blink out of that. That Shackle may have latched, and RDO was right in there to try and dish the damage out. So many plays El Misho's able to make. We sort of talked about it at the start of the match, and he's been pretty impressive. 3, 5, and 10. So Hokori's only got 14 kills. He's been involved in almost every single one of them. It's been incredibly impressive, and well, Hokori may not have entirely sort of mounted this comeback and gotten themselves into the lead yet, but they are getting more and more into that position as this game goes on. And Team, you need to be a little bit careful here. Yes, Sammy is still incredibly powerful right now. You see him working his way towards that crit stick, but as we saw in that fight, if the jump in gets in, and as you mentioned, ET, if RDO it gets onto you with the items that he's built up, then the Clinks is so hard pressed to not just do his own damage, but just straight up survive.
Yeah, and that's where the DPS race will really start. You see Sammy Boy going back for the crit. Unfortunately, you are having a crit stick when RDO has already built up the full AC. It really feel like this damage is not going to be coming out as fast as we need it from with this Clinks. Sammy Boy just immediately queues up the Daedalus as well. He knows the position that he's in. It's definitely a big opening for Hokori, where even though they don't have this Aegis, I don't think Team are going to be actively looking for those fights. They can definitely split push the crap out of Hokori here. They do have a really good lineup when it comes to that, and there is still only that soul physical damage coming from RDO, but that's also where they are ahead of the exchange. If RDO wants, he can hit this tier 3 tower, and you need to respect it.
And they want that tier 2 down bot. The glyph is going to sort of slow them down a little bit, and now the living armor comes in, so somebody's got to go back. There we go. Sammy does sort of double back for it, while his teammates were the ones who sort of TP'd in to try and defend that tier 3 top, but look at the damage that it takes here. It loses about 500 HP off of a very casual push in from Hokori, where they don't commit anything. No lives, no ults, really no nothing. They just sort of do some damage, and then they back off, and now, well, we'll see how much of the map they can now control, because Team were getting a counter push in the bottom lane themselves, which RDO is now going to try and fix as he'll push that lane out a bit. But
Yeah,
this is a smoke play out from Team.
they
Pushing
gotta be
into that
careful.
jungle. If they could get onto Analog here, that would be huge. But you see the bat. Yeah, he's just going to link up with his teammates. He knows something's up. So,
It's the
gonna get
top
caught.
lane. They know that nobody is there. Look at all the vision that Hokori have placed. They have a really good idea of where they are. Once they go for this top outpost as well, they know exactly what's going on. It's a really heads-up play from Analog there. I think just seeing how the top lane is and then being like, okay, well, they're not there. Mid lane's all the way in. It's a very simple call to make, but one that you can definitely get caught if you're a little bit too greedy. And having the gem as well, he's the worst hero to get caught off in that situation.
So Analog clears out. And he's now the one sort of pushing out the bottom lane. So Hokori, this is such an interesting scenario they've sort of found themselves in. They're pushing out the lanes. RDO is farming up in the jungle. And at this point, they're almost kind of daring Team to try and come to them. They're not really looking to get too aggressive right now, although they have the means to do so if they really wanted. But I think while they know where their opponents are, they don't have a lot of confirmed vision right now. So there's no easy target. There's no easy lasso play for them at the moment.
Yeah, they want to be careful, and as long as Ryoya can make this break towards the top lane, he's going to be really happy with his position, especially working towards that 25. Even disassembled his Kaisanj, so he was able to pick up that Bloodstone, so giving away his life in a too early team fight is not something he's going to be prepared for, and I think that's where Hokori are definitely being cautious. They're respecting the split push coming in from Team. They're not allowing themselves to get caught off guard. RDO is maybe 100 gold away from his Daedalus. Once he has that, I can definitely see them going on the aggressive again. I think they're really respecting Team's BKBs, where before they definitely had some ins and outs, but they're really being patient.
And at this point, I mean, we could be waiting for next Roche. About sort of 2.5 minutes away from the sort of short respawn. So that could end up being a big play, but the Daedalus has been finished. So if Hokori want to, they could look to, maybe get things going a little bit earlier. And this is something we talked a little bit about way back at the start of this match, whether or not Hokori would try to maybe push the tempo, push the pace a little bit more, and try to sort of head off Sammy before he gets into that late game stage. But we're coming up on 40 minutes, and Sammy does have quite a few items to work with, so I'm not really sure you have hit that timing, but they could still try to make something happen here before Sammy builds even further, because there is still quite a lot of room for this Clinks to grow.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I don't think Hokori are necessarily too upset just because RDO is still an item ahead of Sammy Boy. I think the bigger problem would be if they lose a fight in the next 2 minutes here, Roche respawns, and then they give up that Aegis. I think that's where we're seeing both teams trying to really rely on their vision. You see both the lane wards placed by Hokori, just seeing where their opponents are trying to split out of the map. I think Team are also doing a really good job, however, of not playing in those areas at all. I think that's where the smoke, it's a really good smoke. They're playing off the scan.
They jump in, they get Mike first. The Shackle, meanwhile, actually latched onto Brax, so they're going to be able to hit him up with the lasso. They pull him in and take him down. RDO gets both of those kills, and, well, Team, it is time to run. Flea is getting out of there as fast as he can, but Analog is still trying to catch up. The Flame Break comes in. The Shackle, ooh, that is huge. The bounce from the Flame Break actually sets the Shackle Shot connection up, but Sammy trying to get in there. He's got backup. Ryoya's coming in as well to get a buyback from IX Mike, and now Analog's been taken down. Vitaly has to get away. The Infest gives him the bonus HP, but look at Ryoya continuing to blink his way forward. They want this kill. Can they actually get it? Vitaly's still getting away. The Overgrowth from Gardic has to be used, but now that means RDO is the one sort of in this fight by himself, and he is dishing out a lot onto Ryoya, but once that rage wears off, how does he then get out? He needs someone to come and back him up, but as of right now, they don't have it. Sammy, though, Sammy got stunned up on the backside of that fight. He wasn't able to continue pushing forward, so RDO, heals up, survives, regroups. They take down Mike, who just bought back, and now they're in onto Sammy. They've got him with the root, but look at that damage. Point blank with the barrage. Vitaly and Gardic both go down, but the Shackle from El Misho cancels the TP. RDO's right on top of him, but Flea comes in, dropping down that Yule Scepter, but RDO just doesn't care. Sammy, okay. He gets one more kill onto the Wind Ranger there, but he can't get away from the Lifestealer. As you said before, ET, if the Lifestealer gets onto you, that's it. That's the fight pretty much over, and RDO is the last man standing here, but he does stand victorious, despite, literally every other person on his team dying.
Yeah, and I think that even goes a little bit worse for Team Team than they initially expected. And of course, Sammy Boy, I mean, he got a triple kill at the
Hmm.
end there. Of course, he does give his life away to the life stealer, but that's where they still need to be really cautious. I think if you don't get kited by El Misho there, if El Misho isn't able to break up the Clinks and the Mirana away from that Nakes, then you do get hard punished in that timing after Rage. But that's where you also have a level 25 lifestealer. It really does feel very difficult to fight in those timings. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, to see RDO go for an item like possibly the BKB next, just because of how important being spell immune is in this game. But if you can get this lifestealer again onto the Clinks, it is impossible. The problem for Hokori is that everyone else is terrified of Sammy Boy, and I think a little bit of an overestimation there, especially going for that shackle from El Misho when you didn't have the win run up, so it's not like Sammy Boy has an MKB, but poor Mike on the low ground. So much damage.
Knocked back by 2 flame breaks. His tombstone cleaned up by RDO. So Hokori, well, they're trying to set up preemptively around that Roche pit that we still got about 70 seconds before it respawns, but this is a good position for them to be in. They're setting down the wards up on the eye spot, so they know Roche has to be coming up relatively soon, and if we can keep Team Team away from this spot and maybe even keep them staggered if we can find another pick like the one they just got, then Team Team are going to have a hard time trying to contest that Roche.
Yep, and it's where the game is really going to start getting tight. The Tali is getting on a little bit, but yeah, Brax.
There's the lasso into the Ravage. That's only onto Brax, but the Ravage honestly was maybe more to keep some of the other heroes away, and it does succeed on that front. Sammy doesn't want to go in. Ryoya was already sort of leaving the area, so again, there's that stagger. Brax, yeah, he's got to buy back. Roche is coming up soon.
They don't want to give it up. They know it's respawning at 25 as well. It would have been 50 seconds, but Sammy, this is an early BKB.
Popped. RDO not going to be able to track him down initially, so... Well, you survive, but now there's no BKB for this Roche fight. That's going to get incredibly awkward as the arrow will connect onto Vitali, but really nothing to follow that one up, but there's going to be the smoke out from Team Team. They're looking for the sneaky play.
Where's the roll?
Vitali, though, wants in. He has the blink. No Ravage, though, but there's going to be the infest. RDO hopping out. They need to get onto Sammy, though, on the backline, but for now, the Clinks is just sort of holding his ground. And Hokori's lineup is 2 split up. They've got to try and get back into one sort of unit, but El Misho is getting hit up. Not able to catch him out just yet, though, and now he'll turn around for the shackle. It doesn't really do much good, but it does allow those 2 halves to link back up, and Roshan has now respawned, and yeah, with that vision you're pointing out, they look to push in again. Flame break onto Flea. Ryoya, though, he blinks in. He's going to look to take Vitali down as quickly as possible, but that's a Tide Hunter. You are not going to be able to get a quick kill onto a Tide by any means, and now Ryoya, he's stuck in the middle of this. He's going to pop his own Ghost. Oh, he pops his, but now Sammy's going to get hit up by that lasso. They pull him into the river, but where's the damage? They're not here to attack. They're just 2 split up. Analog goes down. Gardic falls as well. And 4 Zoomers, excuse me, not 4 Zoomers, Team, my mistake, reading the wrong tags, but they now have control of the pit, but maybe not for long. There's a buyback from Analog and Gardic, so they're back in, but look at that. RDO gets stunned. The Rage wasn't popped. That's a massive misplay. He does not respect that lockdown, and Ryoya just cleans him up. Triple kill for your Leshrac, and that is not a Roche fight. That is Roche for free.
And no buyback. So he completely doesn't play around the fact that his teammates are back in the game. I think they stick around way too long after blowing the Ravage on only a Pango there, and Team kite everything out of you, and you saw there, again, the Bat Rider goes forward, he tries to get that lasso onto someone, but you're getting hit up by the Burning Army, you're getting hit up by the archers, you're getting hit by everything, and without an armor item, you take so much damage, you get shredded, and that just feels like a massive misplay. Then going towards the high ground, not popping Rage by RDO, and Team, I mean, this is everything. They now get to push in immediately. There's a full Gleipnir on Sammy Boy as well. He is really feeling the Clinks. Has the pocket Ags, so Burning Army is now actually in the game too. So you walk up and suddenly you can't do anything. And with these archers placed, again, the approach is almost impossible for Hokori.
Yeah, he is just setting up that sort of defensive structure right now where Ryoya comes in to try and barrel their way through the tier 3. They are going to get it. The Living Armor and the Glyph both deployed, but
they push so fast.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter. They get it. They could honestly at this point swing for 2. I think they might as well go for it. Go top. There's still no Lifestealer up for about 15 more seconds, so they're going to try and make it happen. Mike even throws down that Tombstone preemptively, so anybody that Hokori tries to send in to defend this is going to get immediately sort of slowed up and ambushed. And yeah, that's an easy second lane of racks for them, and now they can just back off for free.
Yeah, this is really nightmare mode for Hokori now because we have got towards that late game stage. Sammy Boy is working towards his level 30, and Clinks is the best level 30 in the game, arguably. Every single point up in those levels at this stage does so much for him. He's even going back for the Hurricane Pike just to shore up any of his defensive issues that he could possibly have, but we are getting to the point where you're getting outfarmed, you're getting outplayed, and it needs to be next Ravage. Battalion needs to hit something massive here, but they smoke after the arrow connected. So, look, Flea just breaks it all. What do they find?
Brax is coming in. There's the roll. Gale Force will be thrown down, though, so that's going to maybe allow them to regroup a little bit. They finished off Mike. They need more. They got to get onto Sammy. RDO is trying for it, but Analog is the one dropping. Can he get away? No, he cannot. Brax is able to take him down. Vitaly, though, goes in for the Ravage. They've locked down Ryoya. If they could finish him off, that'd be big, but there's going to be that Ghost Scepter coming out again. They get the stun down as RDO runs out of time on his own magic immunity, and he's going to get locked in place. Not dead yet, though. Still trying to fight. He'll find the kill onto Ryoya, but with Sammy coming in, it's time for the Lifestealer to try and back off. He needs something to infest, but he hits by the Abyssal. Still able to get the infest down, though that was seconds away, really, but Sammy's able to find the kill onto Omisho anyway. So they do get that, but now there's going to be a secondary fight here, but I don't know how well Sammy. Sammy? He's getting kind of left behind. The Gale Force is going to push him further away into the Shackle. Even if they bring him down, though, he is going to have the Aegis, so he'll have a second life to work with, and hopefully for him, his teammates will be able to get into position to defend him, because right now they're just kind of leaving him. What do they have? Brax is here, but not on a lot of HP. Flea can send the arrow in. He will do so. That locks down Vitaly. It looks like Sammy's going to be able to get away with the Skeleton Walk, but he's looking like he wants to go back in. Brax is actually starting the roll, and they're going to go for it. They're going to hit up Vitaly there with the first bit of damage. Gleipnir comes in for the root. RDO, though, able to rage it away. And this one is really just going to reset. Sammy, however, was able to grab a gem on the ground. So, and for the Clinks in particular, that is going to be pretty big. Keep that gem back out of their opponent's hands, and it gets a little messy, but Team still very much in control right now. 27k ahead in the aftermath of that fight.
Yeah, the biggest thing for them right now is you weren't forced to use RDO's buyback at the very least, but you weren't able to kill Sammy Boy for that second time there. I think El Misho even has to give up on the kill a little bit sooner just because you don't have dust. You ran out of vision. You used absolutely everything to try and get eyes on him, and then he's unfortunately just able to walk away, but that was their biggest opportunity. You had him without the Death Pact, without the Aegis, without the BKB, and it can definitely still kill Sammy Boy, but this problem is still, if Analog is unable to find his ulti, if he's not able to get a lasso back, this is going to happen. The archers get placed down. This is such an early burning army because it is just them getting the glyph, and here's the lasso.
The lasso, they'll pull him in. Clinks is dropping low. Can they get him back out? No, they can't. Sammy dead. Brax now has to back away. Mike trying to get out as well, but the Overgrowth momentarily keeps him from leaving, and now Mike, that's more than momentarily. The Gale Force is going to push him back into the base, and he will be taken down. So Hokori, well, they needed a strong play there on that high ground. They get exactly that. Their tower survives. They'll start healing it up with Gardic with the living armor, and that's massive. Getting Sammy Boy down there, he does have a buyback, but without his presence, the rest of Team just don't have the confidence to push that high ground again.
And more importantly, that was on RDO able to finish off this nullifier. With it, they were actually able to chain him up. He wasn't able to get BKB off, even if he didn't get chains on there. Vitaly's getting got on bottom, but I think he's going to be fine. But that's exactly what they need to do. Analog's been struggling to get anything going for him when it comes to actually hitting those lassos, so that is massive for him. If Bat's ever able to drag the Clinks into 5 heroes, they do exactly what they need to do. They burst everyone, and that's where the save just can't come through from the Undying. When you're that far away from your teammate, you can't really expect to get saved at that point. We might see Sammy Boy go for a Satanic next, something like that, but the game can definitely go either way at this point, especially with the nullifier on RDO. It just means that now you're not going to get kited out by these Ghost Scepters. We might see Team look for a slight changeup because they got to fear it. Every single time RDO is going to be able to stick on you just that little bit easier now.
And it feels a little bit weird to say that this is sort of still potentially up for grabs or anyone's game with a 22k net worth lead for Team, but that is the potential strength of RDO here. If they can't sort of keep him contained, and they've done their best to this point, but that nullifier sort of changes things a little bit, then the net worth lead may not really matter all that much when it comes down to the actual fights. And you see RDO, he's actually queued up a rapier here as well. That would be quite the all-in play for Hokori, but well, they really don't feel like they have an alternative. So the rapier has been purchased. Vitaly, meanwhile, goes in for the refresher or purchase. So you've got the double ravage, you've got a rapier on your life stealer, and well, Hokori is ready to party. They just need to find somebody to hit.
Yeah, and it's honestly really smart because if Team don't value the strength that Hikori were just able to pick up, they will get hard punished if they go for another high ground push like that. I think that's where we might see Team decide to respect their opponents here. Just instead plan their side of the map a little bit more, try to get some of that defensive vision down. You even see Sammy Boy saying that this is where they could be. Unfortunately for us, we get to see that they are not there. They're just going to be in their base doing the exact same strategy, trying to be as defensive as possible. That's why RDO, even in the buy, is just sitting in his Tidehunter. He doesn't want to give anything up, any chance for RDO to maybe get leap hexed into an arrow, into a split earth. There's no chances being given to either side. And until Roche is alive, there really isn't a reason for Hikori to leave their base, but that's where these team fights could definitely get messy because aside from that word bottom, Hikori are completely blind on the map.
Yeah, they really just see very little outside of their immediate base. They do have a ward down here bot, but this ward was put down sort of in an earlier time where they were maybe looking for more fights in that bottom lane. Not really the case anymore, but ooh, okay. They've popped the smoke, so they will try to use that ward after all. And they've got the Ravage. Ryoya didn't pop the BKB in time. Can they hit him up, though? He does have the E-Blade onto himself, but he actually doesn't use it. Doesn't pop the Nihilism either. He just gets absolutely annihilated. And, well, RDO, with the Nullifier and the Rapier, is able to find that kill. That is a big one for the Hikori side.
Triple crit. RDO just got 3 crits in a row. I can't believe it. I have no idea what just happened. He just died in 3 hits. That's crazy because now that is in your important moment where 78 seconds, you have to now retreat entirely on Team side. Of course, that was only one Ravage, but I don't think Vitaly is going to feel very pressed into popping that refresher to get the second one going. It's just a really unfortunate circumstance. I think that's where not seeing items like the Shiva's Guard or an Aeon on this Leshrac is really going to be unfortunate because with those items, you don't need to worry about reacting there. But that's also where I think really walked ahead of his support. If he was a little bit closer, then maybe he gets force staff, maybe he gets pushed away, and then that BKB after the fact feels a little bit nicer. But he lost everything there. And Brax, he's going to complete this TP. Oh, good.
Well, okay.
So scary.
Able to get himself out. Analog, meanwhile, finished off a refresher. So you've got yourself the double lasso. You've got 2 fireflies, so we can just pop it back to back. The flame breaks are going to be just flying out like crazy in these engagements too. So a lot more damage coming out over the long term if Team aren't careful and if their BKBs aren't ready. And even if their BKBs are ready, well, 2 lassos could still put you in some serious trouble. So Hokori, they're starting to feel themselves a little bit. They know that they've got a power spike they could take advantage of. The Lesh, though, is it going to be coming back up? So Ryoya is back on his feet. Did not really have to suffer too much for the loss of their Lesh other than maybe vision and control of the map. But now they scan, and they scan at the perfect time because Hokori are in here just as Roshan are respawning, or is respawning, and they're going to try and go for it. Can there be any sort of response from Team? They're kind of making their way over, but Roche is dropping pretty damn fast. They're just not going to make it.
Yeah, and this is just so easy. Now they get to TP back. I think they make this play thinking that Roche is going to not respawn a little bit faster, but this is a terrible situation now, and Sammy
gets lassoed. They lasso him in. They'll pull him in with the shackle shot as well. The nullifier applied. A second lasso coming just to make sure he's locked down, and Sammy cannot get away. Ryoya will now look for the TP. And, well, Gardic, he tried, but he wasn't able to get there in time. So they will at least get one out, but that's Sammy dead. He's got money for buyback, but that was so perfectly handled by Hokori. The second they take Roshan, they get the goodies, and they just TP straight back in and look for that fight, and they get it.
Yeah, and then El Misho with the Gale Force into the Shackle. He hit even before Analog was able to get that initial lasso. But then also Analog saying, I'm not risking this. I have CDR. I'm going to be fine just going for it anyway. So even though it feels like it's expensive to pop both, it just works out. And now everything is in their field. They have an Aegis. They have a Rapier on the same hero. All of that damage was with the Daedalus backpack as well. And unfortunately for Hokori, I think they are going to whiff with this nice little 3-man smoke here, but you still have both Ravages available to you, and we might just see Vitaly immediately hike it back to his opponent's side of the map, looking for another huge play.
Yeah, and Team they have to wait for Sammy. You see them just, well, cowering is probably too strong of a word, but they are holding inside of their base for the time being until Sammy's back up, because without him, they really won't have the damage. The Leshrac can hit hard, but not hard enough to get through everybody by himself, so they've got to sit there, they've got to wait, but while they do so, Hokori take a just crazy amount of control across the map. Only real downside is this top wave could be pushed out a little bit harder. Gardic is sort of periodically making his way up there, but they could get that pushing it a little bit harder for them if they want to try and pressure up that high ground as Fleet. Okay, Gale Force slowed him up. Vitaly tries to get in for the gush, but the leap charges will still get him away, and Hokori... Do you think they just try for a high ground push right now? That seems incredibly risky for them, but they have Aegis, they have Cheese, they've got 3 to 4 Ravages with the Refresher Orb and the Refresher Shard, but if they lose that fight, then Team's really just right back on top of them.
Well, that's the thing. Hokori do have to try to win eventually. They can't just wait forever. And it's not like Team are going to amass this incredible, 6-slotted on all of their heroes situation where Hokori can't fight. It's just that they don't want to throw. You don't want to be the team that goes high ground and then gives away your entire lead. You'd love to equalize the racks a little bit here, but there's also these massive risks where you suddenly get chain stunned up by the Pango, where you suddenly lose your heroes before any spells get off. And bottom, Analog,
Rooted.
he's got a BKB.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be fine here.
Blinks, TPs should be fine. Brax could hit him with the Abyssal, but he doesn't have the vision. And Analog gets away. But ET, here's the thing. And maybe it's a little bit of the flashbacks coming in here, because we saw a game earlier today, that second match, D2 Hustlers versus 4 Zoomers, where D2 Hustlers maybe waited a little bit too long, dragged to their feet, didn't use sort of aggressive buybacks, as you and Pandago were sort of mentioning. This situation feels like it's maybe approaching a similar scenario. Hokori obviously don't have the lead right now, but they're the one in the advantageous position, but there is not going to be a guaranteed win the game button. You will have to take a risk at some point. The question is, how much of a risk are they okay with taking? You see them sort of smoked up right now, so they are looking for some sort of fight, but I'm not really sure if this is going to work for them unless Vitaly just straight TPs in, and
Ooh.
this is still a little bit dangerous, but this is turning into a bit of a pincer. If they could hit from multiple directions, it'd be huge. Vitaly wants it, but his blink just got canceled. Those burning army skeletons do come in, but Gardic is still able to connect with the overgrowth, and they're going to try and give it a go. They're looking to bring down Mike first. They do so. Vitaly now goes in for the second Ravage, but Sammy doesn't care. He's just dishing out the damage. They'll take down Vitaly, but the lasso comes in, connecting onto 2. Second lasso being set up. They're going to lock down everybody. Ryoya has fallen. Sammy is going to get hit up by the Shackle Shot, but they don't have the damage. RDO is just getting bashed around left, right, and center, and Vitaly comes in for a third Ravage. That buys time for RDO to respawn with the Aegis, and they will bring Sammy down that time. So, well, I was going to say, how much risk are you okay with taking? They burn through a lot of those resources, but Sammy has been taken down, and if he doesn't buy back, Team are going to be pushed back into another defensive position. But honestly, even with Ryoya and Sammy being taken down, that was so much of Hokori having to commit, right? They use multiple lives on RDO, they use 3 Ravages from the Tidehunter, and both of Analog's lasso plays there too.
Yeah, and that's where Vitaly really screwed up there. He unfortunately used everything. He used his first 2 Ravages on BKB units. He wasn't able to kite it out. I think he was unready for, both of the 7 seconds on these targets. And because of that, he has to buy back and then hopefully gets back into the fight in time, which he definitely does. But now you're playing 3 buybacks down. You lose the win bottom because El Misho is trying to push out the wave alone. Of course, we are at tier 5, so the game is going to get a little bit zany now, but you're definitely now playing at a massive deficit because look at Hokori. Because of that death bottom, they don't feel confident enough to march over and now force out the Clinks and the Leshrac buys, meaning that they're on a razor's edge. Anyone dies going forward. If you overextend, you get into a situation where you get taken out by the Burning Army, by these heroes that were just able to kill you very easily in their BKB timings, and you lose. That was a fight where Hokori had 3 Ravages and an Aegis on the Nakes, and they still lost it, I want to say, pretty convincingly. And even though they're all alive, they're still breathing, they're definitely playing during a huge opening for Team. The real question is, how will Team really try to punish this, and will they decide to punish it, or will they just wait for this next Roche?
And how far are we away from that? Minute 45 for the fastest respawn, so it could be a little while. In the meantime,
Their giant makes.
did he? He did. He got nags up on the Treant Protector, so those eyes, they're gonna start getting set up here. So Team, you have no way of knowing. You could be walking into a perfect opportunity for Gartic to hit you up. Meanwhile, yeah, that giant ring, second time now we've seen the Lifestealer pick that one up. Last time, honestly, last time it really didn't matter too much when it was, I think, Yuma who picked it up. The giant ring really doesn't protect him all that much. But RDO, slightly different situation. He's got a rapier to protect, so make him as big as possible. 4k HP. He can infest into someone like Vitali, as he's been doing pretty much every time. And Vitali, does he have? Yeah, he does. He has the Apex. Look at how damn tanky he is with the infest. Just shy of 5,700 on his HP. That's gross.
Yeah, you're really tanky. You're really scary. I think another big item is the Fallen Sky on Analog. Just means that he's going to be able to chain up these heroes even more. He's already been doing a really good job with the Ag's Lasso. I think that was the sickest thing on the low ground during that engagement, but that's where Hokori are definitely playing a little bit more fast and loose style. They definitely want to make that decisive winning play pretty soon here. I don't think they want their opponents to feel too safe on their side of the map, and that's where the riskier play can definitely net you the profits, but you can also throw your game so quickly here, especially if Analog goes down early.
Well, starting to maneuver their way towards the pit. You see Team in a similar position on their own side. Just waiting to see what goes down here. Will we get the fast respawn? Yes, we will. Roche is back up, so... Oh, Roche is back up. Aegis Cheese, Shard, and Aghanim's Blessing all available. And, well, Team are backing away from it. That's a bit of an interesting one. I'm not sure they've sort of timed this one out, and if Hokori, oh man, if they knew that their opponents had backed off there, that could have been their opening to just get in, take Roche, and get out, but they don't know. They don't quite have that vision over in this west side jungle. In fact, neither side has any vision in that triangle area. It's just gone completely dark for both of them. But Team will reoccupy the area, and the standoff around the pit will continue to develop, but this is always going to be the thing for Flea. He's, well, way above level 25, but he does have that talent. So the arrows, especially in the middle of a fight, that's always something to sort of keep an eye on. Teams really do lose track of it. One arrow, sure, you can track that relatively easily. 3 arrows and coming out multiple times, that's where people's focus begins to wane a little bit. There are obviously other things they need to be focused in on, and all of a sudden you eat an arrow to the face and the fight changes.
Yeah, in addition to that, we've got the refresher also on Sammy Boy. Of course, no Satanic, so you're not seeing that aspect of the hero. There's no lifesteal. He just has to work with the HP pool that he's been given to him. But level 30, you got Searing Arrows multi-shot. You do so much damage in these long engagements, and that's where everything is still about, do you have the territory? Do you see the approach? How much vision do you actually have to make these engagements happen? Because you could very easily get stunned up for 8 seconds by this double Ravage and then lose the game. But Analog, the Hex.
Did he get away? No, he didn't. They hex him up. They're going to be able to lock him down, though. Well, that's a very nice play with the Aeon Disc. That's going to allow him to try to fall back, but he still needs to get away. He'll actually use the lasso onto Brax, but then blinks out of it himself, so that will break, but Vitali's in. Ravage there. Sammy had already activated the BKB, though, but you do see him falling back, trying to get away. He realizes that BKB is starting to run out of time, so he is looking to get out, but the Ravage comes in a second time. They lock down the Clinks. Can they actually finish him off, though? They need the damage, but they don't actually see him right now. They need it to be able to get in, and now they've got it. The Clinks is going to get hit up. The Shackle locks him down. E-Blade, though, from Flea is going to keep Sammy alive. This fight is getting so chaotic right now, and Vitali is actually the first to fall. His buyback is unavailable. El Misho, well, he tried to make the play onto Sammy himself. That is not going to work out for him, and now things are falling apart. The Lifestealer has been caught. The Rapier has to be protected. That's an unfortunate disconnect, and here's the thing. Vitali has no buyback. I don't think Team necessarily know that for sure, though, so Hokori are going to try and sort of wait this out, because if they say, you know, he's dead with no buyback, you can't really give that information out, so we'll continue to wait, but this is going to be big. RDO really can't afford to let this Rapier fall. You see Analog. Oh, okay, no, they do now. Never mind. All of that was completely irrelevant. I wasn't sure if they knew that the buyback had already been expended, so they want to go anyway, and technically speaking, they do have a bit of a point here, but can they get this kill? Analog is TPing in. If they can keep RDO alive, they'll always have a shot, but how much damage is left? Ryoya's in here. He's hexed up, but he can still do the AoE damage with that Pulse Nova. I'm not sure that's enough.
Yeah, it's not like the worst thing ever, but all things considered, it is slightly rude. It's okay though.
Where's the rest of Team Team at this point? Sammy, outside of the base. Mike and Flea are sort of hanging out next to him.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Oh. I don't know if Sammy wants to go in right now. This is still a little bit risky, and there's heroes sort of outside of the base who could try to hit him, although the Gardic is too far away, and Analog is the one sort of TPing directly back into his base to try and save his buddy, so... Well, they could just pour it all in. RDO's low. If we finish him off, we can just maybe take the game. There's no infest for 15.
I think
know,
he
man.
should be fine for just the immediate action coming out here. But I also think that I think it's a shackle that's about to land onto Rioya, and that is a little bit scary for him, especially because his teammates are all rushing towards him as we speak. But it's really hard to say because you also look at the Batrider, who's pretty much out of gas. You only have a flame break to help out your teammates here. You do have a fallen sky in 1.9 seconds, but that's also where your TP is very fresh. This is a TP that still is yet to be completed. But again, preparation, Dota, name a worse combo. This is a second pretty trash pause in the game, but can't be too upset about it. I think probably going to see the Nullifier immediately go out onto Ruoya, and then looking at the Hex, seeing what's actually going to happen. If Ruoya can escape here, it's going to be massive for him, but doesn't have the Bloodstone, has the Pulse Nova still going. If he gets shackled, he's going to have even less mana, so it's not like he's going to be able to heal very much here. But I think Brax is also just going to sit around here and try to be as obnoxious as possible. But that's where Mike has Blink and Force Staff. They're just going to rush over as soon as they can, try to heal Rioya, and here's probably the end of the game.
Oh, Shackle comes in, latches onto Rioya, so RDO is going to be able to pull back. But Analog, well, didn't actually make it all the way back in. He gets taken down, no buyback available, and Hokori have to try and hold this, but this is their last lane. It feels like forever ago, but the other two lanes of Rax had previously been claimed by Team Team, so they are going to be able to get their hands on the Mega Creeps here, and there's absolutely no way Hokori can actually wait out these death timers for, what? Yeah, 85 and 100 seconds, so Sammy's just going to push in. Tier 4 towers are dropping. RDO will make the push now, though. They're going to try to get onto Rioya, but there's going to be the Abyssal Blade from Brax, blocking that Lifestealer down. And he's going to infest and try to fall back, but the tier 4s are down. The Ancient's exposed. They've got to go. Trying to get onto Sammy, but look at that bash. Brax comes in. Rolling Thunder now going to be applied as well. RDO lockdown finished off, and that's it. The GG will be called, and Team Team will take game 1, take some 66 minutes, but they get the victory.
Yeah, and I think Team Team really did a good job of sticking to their guns. Really, those first two racks came off of some really important team fighting, and that one team fight where everything kind of fell apart for them, especially near the pit. I think Hokori had their moment in this game. I think maybe after they get that Aegis back in their hands, they try to press the issue a little bit in the top lane, but unfortunately, they were never able to fix that bottom lane push. There was always that split push pressure coming in from the team side. They did a really fantastic job of keeping their opponents looking back, even though very clearly it felt like Hokori could have made that push up onto the high ground. But when you're playing 2 racks down, you really have to value your final racks over everything else. So it really killed a lot of that aggression that I think, unfortunately for Hokori, they weren't able to ever rekindle. In addition to that, just the BKB usage out of Team a little bit too on point. I think Vitaly really struggling to find at least that first Ravage. I think a lot of the time the second Ravage was connecting, but you hate to hear that. You really need to find those breakneck connects, and without it, I think they were lacking the control that let RDO hit up. It was just a little bit too hard for them to approach, and that's where Team's second pick phase here with the Clinks and the Leshrac just played perfectly into the Batrider. And again, I think it's that awareness in draft that Team really were able to push, even though Hokori definitely put them on the back foot there for just a little bit.
It was, well, a little touch and go. Taking a look at that graph, you can see multiple times, or two times really, where Team's lead was kind of slipping through their fingers, but in both instances, they're able to regroup. They're able to get back to what they know they need to do. They kept Sammy farming pretty much the whole time. And you can see the results. They're finally able to break through and get themselves that win. So Team take game 1, another long one here today, but Team are certainly going to be happy with the results. They get that first victory, and now they are on the verge of advancing to that third round where they would face off against T2 Hustlers. But Hokori, they've still got something to say, presumably, about this. Game 2 will offer them a shot at redemption. We'll see really what adjustments they make, because they need to now try and fight their way back into this. One more loss would knock them out of the event. So Game 2 should be coming up here in just a couple of minutes, so we'll be stepping away for just a moment or two, and we'll be back for the start of the Game 2 draft.